Good evening, my name is Charles. This is Jared to Jared. On week one's podcast, the Jareds will discuss Life Threads, the movie, Dances with Wolves, and our new podcast. Godspeed, boys.
So you're heading to a retreat today, huh?
Yes, I'm heading to a retreat. So in like an hour and 15 minutes, I'm going to be driving to the Mountain Gate Zen Center in northern New Mexico. It's like an hour north of Santa Fe. And I'm going to sit in silence for 7 days.
This is your, how many retreats have you been on now?
The 7-day ones, this will be my fourth.
The fourth one, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
When was your first retreat you went to?
End of June last year, so June 2022.
Was that a weekend trip or what?
Yeah, that was my first 7-day one, was June 2022.
Oh, okay. Are they all a week, or can you do like weekends? I thought you did weekend ones.
Yeah, back when I was
Friends.
working, teaching, I would do weekend ones. Yeah, and then in November I was still working, and I did like a 3-day one. Yeah, and that was insane, because when I was working, I would go pretty much like open up my mind and my spirit, essentially, and then come back into teaching in downtown Albuquerque, and it was just such a weird, jarring experience.
What a weird
you know?
juxtaposition.
Yeah, sitting in absolute peace and tranquility in the mountains, and then just going straight into just like
Maybe
bullshit.
maybe you needed that like complete bipolar, like heaven and hell, the freaking paradiso and the,
Well, what I think
inferno.
what I think it was I feel like when you're about to like step into a new chapter, like you're seeing these moments of clarity, right? But they're brief and they're short-lived, right? It's like you come out of the mud, you come up for air for like a weekend, right?
Right.
And then you're right back in it. But then that weekend of clarity shows you like, no, there's other ways to live. You don't need to be in the mud constantly.
Right.
So I think it was like a natural transition of kind of like a couple of weekends where I was opening up and getting more clear, and then was like, fuck this, I can't.
Which is kind of like the
anymore,
thing, like we were talking about. It takes
Right.
when you get sick. When she told me you're going to get sick after
Yeah.
a couple rolfing sessions,
Right.
you got to get all the toxins out first,
Yeah.
before you can really start on the like healing journey.
Yeah, and it's strange because on these retreats I'll go, and then like the last one I did, 7 days, and then I'm driving up to Denver after that, and driving, it's beautiful, and I'm feeling so light and clear. And then once I get close to the city, there's traffic, and then I put on the news because I'm curious what I missed over the past week, and then it's just all devastating shit, and people are cutting me off and honking and stuff, and I'm just like, whoa, and you immediately start to feel yourself just like descending back into the shit.
Right. Which is the way I feel after like camping trips or
same
going
thing,
fishing
yeah.
for a long
Totally.
time,
Yeah.
But it's weird. There's like a loneliness out in the woods that you can't experience. And I think that's part of why it helps you miss civilization too. Because it's also so empty, so wild out there. Yellowstone. They always like talking about how like the Gothic landscape, right? It doesn't care whether they live or die. It doesn't care
Right.
who John Dutton is, freaking the cause,
Right,
whether
right.
he owns the land or doesn't own the land.
Yeah.
Because the land is the land, right? And
Right.
so.
There is no law.
Right.
Deliverance style, dude.
Right.
There's no law here.
Where's the law? There's no law.
So many good lines in that movie.
Freaking Drew.
No, but you're right though, and it's interesting because I think there's like an attachment to I don't know what to call it, like the density of living just day-to-day life, right? The density of living in the city, working, all of this stuff. There's a density to it, and when you leave that density, I mean, well, it depends. I mean, I've experienced both, but like sometimes there's just like, oh, thank God, you're just relief, for getting out of that level of density. Right. But then, sometimes there is, there's an attachment there. You miss that density because it's what you know.
Right.
You know, like I could be like living in anyone could be living in a Buddhist monastery right now, meditating every single day, just feeling deeply at peace constantly. I could. That's an option. But I'm actively choosing to not do that because there's something I'm getting out of being in the world.
Well,
you know?
and also it's not always peaceful living in the woods. That's the other thing. You can't find necessarily a full-time peace.
Right.
Because of, I think, the landscape, the fear, being alone, not being around society,
right.
you know, etc. And that's what helps you to grow, though, out in the woods.
Right. You have some space.
Yeah, you can reject the, the city or like that whole spirit, like you're saying, the entrapment of the panoptic space of the city.
Right, and that's so interesting because thinking about Deliverance and Dances with Wolves, we've been talking about the sort of seeker trope, right? You have like Kevin Costner or Burt Reynolds, whoever, they're feeling, dissatisfied and discontented with their world, the city, their culture, and then they, try and find something closer to the heart in wilderness with a different culture, all of that.
Right.
And I think they're mistaken because what they're doing is they're just exchanging one thing for the other, which there's no balance in that. I think it's important to live balanced, right? I mean, live your life, have your job, your relationships, et cetera, and then go into silence, go into the wilderness, a few times a year or whatever it needs to be in order to come back to center and know what it feels like to be centered as you then continue to carry yourself in the world.
Do you think we hate Drew, the character, so much in Deliverance?
Yeah, Drew sucks.
Yeah. Everybody, but he's like, it's natural to hate him, though. It's weird.
Yeah.
But we would all sort of have that law-abiding institutional fear within us.
Right.
And it's a shadow. That's why we hate him so much.
So
it's like a rejection of that as well.
And what does he actually symbolize, right? Because his main line, his one memorable line in that movie is when I think it was Lewis who said, they're deciding what to do with the body that they just killed. And Lewis says, this is a democracy, right? Let's vote on it. And then he looks at Drew and he says, you believe in democracy, don't you, Drew? Something like that, right? And then Drew gets very, very self-righteous for a moment, and he's just like, "Of course I do. Of course I believe in democracy." And it's like this. It's fascinating because that movie was 1972.
Yeah,
where an era that wasn't too dissimilar from our own in terms of the sort of a lot of people questioning their government and patriotism and the system and all that sort of stuff.
How far were we out from Vietnam in 72?
Vietnam ended in like 74, I think, right?
Oh, so it wasn't over.
Or even later, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, so it was still going on.
So no wonder the discontent then.
Yeah, so it's like you have this guy that Drew's trying to hold on to American values, right? And American values that...
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they're becoming disenchanted with these American values. Like that, the society writ large, or a lot of people anyway, are becoming very disenchanted with the American ideal. And Drew is still trying to speak up for that ideal.
Right.
And within a context that it doesn't work anymore. People are questioning that. And I think that's why he's kind of off-putting.
Yeah.
He's a 50s man, Drew.
He is a 50s man.
Yeah.
Drew, you think Drew would be pro the Vietnam War?
Potentially. That's so. Funny. I mean...
like the metaphor for the, for the war within the movie. We didn't even really think about that. Talking about the othering of the Vietnamese, etc.
Right.
Or the lack thereof of the law.
Yeah.
Within the jungle or the forest or the woods, the natural space, right?
Yeah.
Which freaking Lewis was always freaking out about, what law?
Yeah.
And that's how it was in Nam. That's what we were saying this morning. The freaking...
And juxtapose it with like Apocalypse Now.
Outside. Yeah. There was no law.
Yeah.
Which then leads into the industrial complex.
Right.
Which, would you say that movie touches on it?
On which? The military industrial complex?
Yeah.
Deliverance?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Maybe. I'm not sure if I necessarily see that, but I definitely I think it's peculiar that movie came out within, in the historical context of the Vietnam War, where you have these 4 American guys just sort of choosing to go into the woods and get lost, and then are confronting the woods, confronting nature, confronting the other,
Right.
end up killing someone. It's sort of like, I don't know, there's something weird about that, because that whole movie is about sort of like this wanting to get back to a natural setting before that natural setting
Right.
is totally destroyed, right? And
Right.
totally, colonized, all that sort of thing, urbanized. So there's a desire for that within their own country, while at the same time, young men are being shipped out to another country that's still very, very wild,
Right,
naturally, just naturally wild still,
So I'm thinking about your journey now. Going from the city of, Jersey, or
Long
Long
Island.
Island. Sorry, I always make that mistake. Long Island, right?
Yeah.
And then you came out to the West.
Yeah.
So the West was sort of your canoe trip, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And your deliverance journey, you
Yeah.
know. And when you came out to the West, wow, you met freaking Squill Like Pig Boy, which was metaphorically Albuquerque, which is also back to Yellowstone and
Right,
the natural landscape.
Yeah.
The landscape of the Albuquerque desert, right,
Yeah.
is not forgiving. It's the unforgiven out here, you know.
Oh yeah, it's
But
it's
you
wild.
learned to survive, and you found yourself this and that, you know, like Ed. You're Ed, baby. You're
Yeah.
John Voight. You're Jared Voight. You have to climb mountains, you know, etc.
Right.
And take over when you weren't you didn't move here as Drew. You know,
Yeah.
you came here as a freaking Long Island family man.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And you turned into Ed along the way.
Yeah, I
and
could see
now
that.
you're returning to a large city
Yeah.
scape, you know, but as Ed, like accomplished masculine man.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have to I mean, there's so many good lines in Deliverance that reflect that. You know, character Lewis, especially, where he says something like, "You have to get lost in order to, find yourself," or
Right.
something like that. You know, which I think is true. It's like you have to step out into the unknown, into emptiness, into fear, all of that. I mean, and that's what these retreats are really about too. It's not stepping out into the wilderness. We're sitting inside the whole time and just focusing on our breath. But you're confronted fully with yourself, the wilderness inside of you, your own unaddressed shit, that sort of thing.
Right.
Which I think it's important,
Yeah.
And to do that either in that setting or, or whatever, just going out into
Right.
unknown spaces,
The
It's
seeker.
very important.
You know,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
seeker.
Yeah.
That's sort of my journey with academia too.
Yeah.
Constantly seeking,
Right. And you
the
never,
cause.
yeah.
But learning about different things that you then attach yourself to,
Right.
like, which are the preferences within the English degree program where you pick
Yeah.
a time period, pick a couple theories,
Yeah.
and you stay focused to that journey or that
Right,
culture
right.
of literature or theory or whatever.
Hey, here's a question for you about that, because I saw White Noise not too long ago, and it read it in
Right,
college or
right,
whatever too. But one of the things they make fun of in academia is people essentially latching onto, like you were saying, attaching yourself to a bigger sort of institutionalized either theory or artist or whatever. So in White Noise, he becomes a Hitler scholar, and then he's the Hitler guy, and that's the joke, right? It's like he is a small person who latched onto a horrifying but bigger person,
Right.
and then made a career and an identity out of that,
Right.
So he wouldn't have to confront his own insignificance and smallness, right?
Sure.
Is that one, do you think that's something, is that accurate, and do people just attach themselves to institutions because they're afraid, that sort of thing? And if that is true, what do you do with that as someone who works within an institution and does find himself, working with different theories and ideas and all that sort of thing?
Quick little throwback at you is our culture's institutions. And how weird is it that at all institutions we always talk about the culture?
Yeah.
of the institution.
Yeah.
So are they then one and the same, interchangeable, you know?
I think, yes, culture is a cult, right?
Right,
Culture
right,
is an
right.
institution, you know, and I mean, that's one of the problems with I mean, we're in a weird spot because there's so much cultural erasure and cultural fragmentation that there's this craving for culture. But one of the downsides of culture is that you can't fully know yourself unless you leave it, you know? And I'm convinced if I had to optimistically predict what was going to happen in the next 50 years, I think there'll maybe be a resurgence of cultural cohesion and American identity and things like, if I'm being optimistic.
Well, and then in that case, you know, then it is somewhat of a subjective, not a manifestation, sort of a manifestation, but a construct, right?
Yeah.
Culture and institutions and individuality in terms of representation and identification then would also be somewhat of a subjective construct, which is constructed then by not only society, but the personal choices as to what we do, whereas in we're never truly really those things.
Right.
So for the Costner, he's never truly
the cause.
For Kevin, for Kev, he's never really, you know, a Native American SEAL, right?
Right.
Likewise, in White Noise, he's never actually a Hitler scholar because that proof is he never knows how to speak German. He never learned how to speak German.
Yeah.
So he has this personal sort of self-doubting, you know, what do they call it in academia, the imposter syndrome.
Right.
But he is also that as well because he's there lecturing, etc. And only somebody who's a Hitler scholar and identifies as such, German scholar, would be insecure about, you know, not knowing German. So, you know.
Right. Yeah. So we're getting into identity, right? And like, so to what extent are you your identity?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Which is a good question. I mean, like, are you, you know, whatever, I don't know, let's say I grew up in Ireland or something and was just like very, very, very Irish and played Irish music and all of that stuff and and even spoke Gaelic and all of this stuff and felt very rooted in that culture. Yeah. Would that be who I am, or is there something deeper? Is that also just a facade, even if it's a very deeply rooted facade?
Well, it's never really truly you because
it's something you adopt.
Is also, in the Derrida sense, just all fake symbols that are manifested through culture, through time. We apply, you know, as the signifiers, the significance of the sign. You know, so thus the sign being meaningless and arbitrary. You know, but those signs are a representation of human experience, history too. So. You know, we can't just be like, oh, we're nothing, then we're just animals, you know, again. Back to hunter-gatherer, freaking Neanderthal storyline we were talking about at Tia Sophia's this morning, dude.
Yeah, Tia Sophia's.
God, those burritos are good.
Yeah, they're really good. Yes. So then in your own life and experience and work, would you say, what's your relationship to the institution of, you know, academia, literature, all of that? Is this something you identify deeply with, or is it something that you do but isn't who you are, or just?
Well, I think me and you, especially, I don't know, I've just always felt that the person that fully identifies with anything is doing it wrong.
Yeah. There's like a put on there.
Like the Clarence Darrow style. You got to be a multifaceted chameleon where I can identify as a scholar, as a doctor, whatever. I can also identify as like a cool Santa Fe bum that likes to go to 2nd Street and like hang out. And like hang out with you, freaking hang out with the Zay firefighters, you know, like bro got what, you know. And also very much identify with being a father. It's good to be all forms.
Right.
And that's why one of my favorite, most coveted band in my 20s, and I thought was the best, what the band was called Of All Forms. And I think that's always been just a case for like, and I feel like you're similar way. It's probably why we've been friends for a long time. And a lot of all my friends are sort of in that realm, but not all of them though.
Yeah.
And I like the kind of Clarence Darrow where I can jump around the categories,
right.
Yeah. Which is, I think it's a funner existence. I think it's a more enriching way to live than just being like, oh, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. Or,
this is who I am,
Amish,
right?
Or like,
which is always very, very fragile, right? Because the moment
I'm a Democrat or Republican.
The moment you choose a hill to die on, it's like that you become very, very fragile.
It even goes in with music, like. There's some people that only listen to one genre, one time period, etc. Or like even cuisine, food. You're doing it.
I mean, anything. I mean, that's the weird thing.
Culture too.
Right, and that's the weird thing because we'll latch on to literally anything. I mean, whether it's something like politics, of course, or like you're saying something, cuisine or something like that, and oh, I'm an IPA guy, that sort of thing. People are always identifying with something, which isn't necessarily a horrible thing, right? But it depends on are you doing it with awareness? Are you doing it with the realization that like, no, you're not an IPA guy. You're all forms, right? And in this moment, you're choosing to be an IPA guy or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very, very fragile because, and this is why, especially with politics, people get so defensive because if you attack their politics and they're over-identifying with their political ideology, then you're attacking them. And if you knock over their political beliefs, you knock them over.
Right.
But if you take the stance where you are of all forms and you're just playing in the realm of ideas, you can destroy an idea and it was fun. It's a kid building a block tower just to knock it down.
Right.
Like if you told me something that, if you gave me some facts that contradicted some belief that I held, I can either get really upset about it or I can be like, whoa, interesting. Let's go into that. How is that going to reshape my ideas on me?
Right. And this is becoming, this is like becoming a work of art.
Yes. Yeah.
And some scholars may argue, well, you're just becoming a, variation of categories in that case.
Yeah.
Which is not true. You're still becoming a work of art.
Right.
What it's called is a collage, right?
Yeah.
It's a metaphorical collage. And Scarlett's book, Collage, oh my God, so good.
Yeah.
Scarlett's book, Dr. Higgins, about collage. The collage is actually it's postmodern, right?
Yeah.
Pastiche of refiguring. Well, you're becoming a work of art. A collage is a work of art, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's categories of actual pictures, if you think about those collages that make a different picture out of little tiny pictures, right?
Right.
Then you're actually having an identification that's a work of art.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like you really start to expand yourself, right? Because you're either of no form or all forms, right? And I feel like you have to be much more expanded to be able to do that than to identify with one or two, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't know, we're really just talking about social construct, but actually I feel like that's a thing that gets lost in academic classrooms and the humanities. People are constantly, especially for undergrads and stuff, like, oh man, everything's a social construct. But what about a personal construct, right? To what extent are you yourself, just like you're saying, a collage that doesn't really exist, not in the way you thought you did?
And hey, academics, it's not the 80s, we already got the diagnosis. We need a prescription right now. What are we going to do with it? Like even in academia, like working at the college, everybody's real worried about artificial intelligence, ChatGPT and stuff. You can't beat it. How are you going to work with it? How are you going to evolve?
Right.
Let's teach our students to ask ChatGPT questions, just like in a peer review.
Right.
I've been working on a prompt.
Yeah.
You know, where, boom, they're like, it's like a group work, you know, but with a robot, which is fine. But, you know, you're working with the artificial intelligence to still expand humanity. This is Star Trek, my babies. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been hearing about, like, editorial rooms dropping, right, you know, etc.
Yeah.
All these different stuff that, you know, artificial intelligence is doing. But that's the point.
Yeah.
Of getting to a society where we're not relying on money anymore, where we can just live on our own. If we had,
Like, let the robots do the work.
yeah,
I'm going to push against that. Yeah.
Okay, but if we had the replicator, right, system of Star Trek, everybody could eat whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
There'd be no more hunger. There wouldn't be.
Right, yeah.
So you wouldn't have to pay for food.
Yeah.
40% of my paycheck goes to feeding my freaking fat ass. You know?
Yeah.
You know, if the technology to like travel and go to space was a lot more abundant, then we could have other resources, more people working on larger jobs like energy and, you know, living longer, etc. Forget it, man. We're living in a society where we're no longer dependent on, you know, menial things, if that makes sense.
Yes and no. I mean, yes, in theory, like I totally agree, and I hope that we head towards that future where, you know, the robots are going to do the job so that we can sit around making art all day or whatever, that sort of thing, you know? Yeah. And you know, I hope we're moving towards that, but I think if you look at just how our society functions, we're going to do the opposite of that. Where it's going to, if anything, it's going to be seen as a way to increase productivity and force us to work more. So I always think of like the cotton gin as the sort of model for this, where the dude who invented the cotton gin thought that it was actually going to help slaves because now you're creating this machine that can increase your productivity in a shorter amount of time. So, okay, now instead of working 16 hours a day, this dude in the field gets to work, you know, 5 hours a day, whatever. But, you know, slave masters saw the cotton gin and were just like, oh, sick. Now we can, you know, now we can really rev up productivity.
Our revenue.
Yeah, and it got even more intense, you know, and I feel like that's also happened with like, okay, email, right? I mean, email, just like internet, you know, as we understand it now, like the idea, it was the same exact idea in like the late 90s and early 2000s. Like, this is going to increase the rate at which we can produce. So let's just like work 5 hours a day instead of 8 now that we have this, right? But what actually ended up happening is that people are getting texted by their boss at 8 p.m., you know, on like a Thursday night, that sort of thing. Right. So I think the nature of our society is to just like keep clamping down on this just like insane need for productivity rather than to loosen the reins. Because it's about control, you know?
It is true. I mean, and nobody talks about this even with Star Trek. But really, back to the fucking Enterprise. Yeah. Those people, they live on the Enterprise.
Right.
And they work all the time.
Yeah.
Every single day, 7 days a week, you know.
Yeah, those poor guys.
They get to go to, like, the simulator room.
Right.
But we all know how toxic simulation can be, you know, and the freaking metaverse. You want to go to, like, the Mark Zuckerberg room? Like, just like, oh, yeah, that's real peaceful where I could, see fake skies, you know, but I'm really just in a room, you know. Like that. So really what it is it's actually, if from a dark side, is like extreme evolution of like capitalism. Whereas like, you know, the final frontier, whatever, they're always colonizing. It's the recolonization project.
Right. Yeah.
Where, you know, colonization ends for so many years. World War III happens in this scenario of Star Trek, you know.
Yeah.
You know, crazy, you know, we move on to this new thing, we discover light speed and the Vulcans come, etc.
Yeah.
And boom, we're colonizers again and have power yet again.
Right,
you know?
right.
The white systemic racism continues through capital.
And it's the attachment to a frontier. I mean, watching Dances with Wolves the other night, like, it really tripped me out realizing that selling arms, selling weapons is a deeply lucrative thing that hasn't been just happening, let's say in the 21st century to like Middle Easterners and things like that. Like we've been selling arms to people since this country was founded.
Right.
Even before, just like from, European settlers coming over and being like, oh shit, I could sell this gun for, whatever food or whatever. And realizing like, oh, that's so baked into the bread of this country, that's an institution, right? Arms dealers. So I think there's always this need for a frontier. There's always this need for a colonial project. And now that we've colonized like, all of space and nature is fucking dying. So it's like we've colonized physical space pretty much entirely. Where what's the next frontier, right? It's psychological space, it's inner space, it's virtual space.
And then from this lens too, it's interesting to think that when the Vulcans came, so let's just put Star Trek out of it, let's say some alien race came.
Yeah.
The Vulcans, their whole lifestyle and society and the whole entire planet is a full religious, political, military devotion your entire life. Living at Vulcan monasteries, etc. But you work for the Vulcan society forever.
Yeah.
So they taught humans, boom, we're not just a culture, we're a culture of industry. We're not just a business, we're not just a businessman. We're a businessman. Like we're not just a culture, man. We are a culture, man. Like they fucking industry their entire culture, religion, everything, politics, military, travel, government, colonization.
Yeah.
Everybody's in on it 100% of the time. We don't live that way.
Yeah.
Me and you didn't go to the military.
Right.
We're not, we were both put in weird, like Christian religions, but we were able to leave, etc.
Right.
So I don't know.
Hey, here's a sort of random thing, but I realized this the other day and it's so weird, and I'm curious if anyone else has this ingrained in them, but like, okay, so I don't know what sparked the thought, but I was like, I think of the moon as American, which is ridiculous. Okay, hear me out, because I know it's not, right? It's like be an American. Like it's clearly, it's the moon. It's in fucking space. Like it's clearly its own thing. No one owns the moon, right? Not yet, unless they're already mining for materials on the moon. I don't know. But isn't there like legislation around that?
Kubrick style,
What?
That like the moon being American, like the Stanley Kubrick trying to like, Space Odyssey, people saying he filmed the moon landing.
Yeah.
Were we the first country that ever landed on the moon?
Yes, and I think, and I guess what I'm actually trying to say when I say I feel like the moon's American, and I know it's not, but I feel like it is this internalized propaganda. I think whenever I think of the moon, I also think of images of like, I don't know, Neil Armstrong and the American flag being planted on the moon.
Well,
and
that's
it's
that
like
whole
NASA
signifier thing.
Exactly, but that's part of like the ways in which I've internalized, control. It's like, man, they have me so tight that I'm convinced the moon is American.
And it's really weird too that the like competition in this like JFK and with the like Russian military space project was ingrained in like the baby boomers,
right,
who embarked in the Gen Z and us, right, millennials.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, every time we have like movies like Armageddon and shit, there's always like the silly Europeans that are up there, just like in their shitty space stations, just like, welcome to the Russian space, all drunk up there for some reason. But the Americans, here comes freaking Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck.
Yeah, in Hollywood. I think that's it too. This
is, we're at the moon.
Like anytime I've seen someone on the moon.
We've been here before,
Yeah, anytime I've seen someone on the moon, it's always like an American Hollywood actor, right? So it's like, oh, it's obviously an American space.
Right.
So I'm thinking like American space.
I'm wondering if this same shit goes down in like North Korea or like South
Right,
Korean
like are the
films
yeah,
and like
are the Koreans
Chinese
convinced that the
or
moon
North
is
Korean
Korean?
films.
Right.
Yeah, fake movies of the freaking chairman stepping on the moon.
Right.
Were we getting fed fake? How wild would it be if it was fake? Like I fully believe in the moon landing.
Yeah.
But if it was,
Yeah.
that would be so wild.
Yeah.
For like
Well,
Armstrong,
yeah.
that's what freaks me out.
Yeah.
Like Armstrong as an individual,
Yeah.
to have your entire life be based. That's like the
That's
Truman
crazy.
Show.
Yeah.
Just like a weird metaphor for that. But,
Well, that's the thing, because everything's fake, right? I mean, everything is propaganda.
Right.
Using the moon thing, like, okay, I'm going to assume too that they actually landed on the moon, sure, but then the story that develops around it and the significance of it that develops
Right.
around it, that we won, all this stuff,
Right.
It's like that. None of that's real. That's all propaganda. Did it actually happen? Sure. Similar to like COVID or something, right? Where it's like, I remember, the conspiracy theories around COVID. I don't know, there's a bunch of them, but it's like, COVID actually happened, right? A lot of people died from it. But was there a lot of like fake propagandized information that spread out of COVID? Yeah, definitely.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Both sides.
Right, yeah. So it's real and not real.
Right. Just like we were saying with Epstein.
Right.
How everybody denied there was some crazy sex island, and lo and behold, there is. And all kinds of famous people
Yeah. Which is fucking crazy.
Right.
That's like, how do you wrap your mind around that?
I think we should do another like director, how we did John Carpenter movies.
That was fun, yeah.
Which ones did we watch? The Thing,
Carpenter, yeah, The Thing,
Escape from New York,
Escape from New York.
Escape from LA.
No.
We didn't do Escape from LA. Okay.
No. They Live, you didn't see that one yet, but
They
They Live
Live
is another good Carpenter one. That's probably the best Carpenter one, I think.
Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, Big Trouble in Little China. Oh, because we did all the John Carpenter, Kurt Russell ones.
John
That's
Carpenter,
all.
Kurt Russell.
Yeah,
That's
classics. So good.
God, they're so good. Just here in my truck.
Oh, yeah.
Keep the change.
Are you kidding? I just want my truck back. Like, what?
Imagine just driving around doing dialogue to yourself into a CB radio.
Bro, that's what I do pretty much, just not into a CB
That's
radio.
pretty much what we're doing right now.
When I've been driving up to, I'm so glad I don't have to drive back and forth to Denver anymore. That was a lot.
Right.
But for 6 hours there and 6 hours back, I'd get bored. I'd talk to some people on the phone, but then that, wouldn't fill 6 hours. So then I'd just start like either recording myself or just talking out loud.
Talk out a whole
sort of
novel, man.
Yeah, just like considering ideas, and I got some great stuff out of it.
Well, that's how Matthew McConaughey wrote his book, Green Lights, just like driving in his van, talking to himself. Oh, hi.
It's ridiculous.
Green light.
Green light.
I remember back in Texas. Dude, some crazy stories, actually. Did you ever read it?
No.
Green Lights. It's
No,
pretty.
you told
It's
me a bit
actually
about
pretty
it.
good. It's
Yeah.
pretty good. Yeah. I mean, it's not very good, but
He's right about the green light thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I'm learning this now. It's like, you just gotta like catch the thread. It's like you just follow the thread of your own life. I feel like in the past, I was trying to like, I don't know, like grab onto different threads that weren't there, or like create new threads. It's like, no, you just follow the thread of your life. You just lean fully into the thread that's already there, and then it kind of leads you into interesting places.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Which is what are our threads now?
What are
Moving to Colorado.
Yeah, mine. Yeah. My threads are. Yeah, so going to Denver.
Current threads.
Going to Denver.
This could be a good segment.
Yeah.
Current threads.
Current threads. Yeah.
Moving to Denver.
Moving to Denver. On right after this retreat, I'm like the day after the retreat, I'm doing this art market in Denver, which was like crazy, man. Like I spent one day because I moved to Denver and then and then came here not long after. So I spent one day where I was actually like hanging out, you know, just exploring the place. And in that one day, I just met this dude who, you know, was like, hey, there's an art market going on. You could set up in front of my shop if you want, right? And then also on that one same day, I found out about the psychedelic conference and going to go vent for that. And I was like, wow, that's weird, you know, like one day. Whereas like in Albuquerque, it took me a long time to sort of get involved in the art community and stuff. And
Right.
so it's weird that literally day one, I got some leads. I found some threads. And I'm just like, yeah, follow those threads. I don't have any others, so I'll just like follow those and see what happens. You know, or my relationship with Ashley is still pretty new, and I'm just like, follow that thread. What will that thread introduce to me and to her and all of it, you know?
I'm thinking about Ant-Man too, and like the threads of time, though. You know, that whole concept of like changing threads of time and like what they all lead to.
No, exactly. And you could find a new thread if you want to. That perhaps takes a little bit more effort. Like I was half considering, not really, just like I was like, fuck Denver. I'm gonna just like go to Europe and see what happens. Move to Europe. And then I was like, no, there's no thread there. You know, I was like, I could do that, but there's no thread. There's nothing.
Right.
Leading or following, or it was an
escapist
idea,
but perhaps the thread would have been short, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And it was an escapist idea. Yeah, there's escapist threads, or the illusion of a thread. Yeah, exactly. So it's like you have to hold on to the real thread, not the illusion of the thread, the mirage,
right.
Which is an escapist thread.
Yes.
You know, or thinking like, oh yeah, I'm gonna move to
green threads, man.
I'm gonna run away to Canada because America is falling apart. And like, yeah, you could do that, but that's also just like an escapist fantasy.
And Canada's falling apart too.
So, is it? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you
everybody
can't
hates Trudeau, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a few friends from Canada who say, you know, country's falling apart. Hey, they're still paying taxes as a freaking queen, man. You know, the king, should I say
crazy,
now, the crown rather.
Yeah,
so. Yeah.
What's your threads?
New threads are just finished school. Yeah. Academia. Got the PhD. Doctor, man. That was like 15 years of my life.
Yeah.
So it's just weird. Like I've been saying, I feel
so
retired.
You got to the end of a thread.
Yeah. I'm at the end of the thread. Yeah.
That's cool.
The very end. And most threads probably aren't sought out completely. You know, a lot of threads in life aren't. So
yeah.
I have a lot of loose end threads, and those are loose end threads. You know?
Right.
And that's why we like to tie up loose. God, I'm loving this metaphor. We tie up loose ends because it's a thread that needs to be ended, you know?
Yeah.
Because it didn't reach its natural end. So you have to tie up artificial, constructed end to the
Or when
thread.
someone says, I'm at my rope's end, what they mean is I'm done, I'm exhausted.
Dude, this is an issue with me with relationships. I never put artificial end to the thread. I don't want to construct an end. But there's a detriment to that because then I'll repeat offender, keep dating the same person, reaching out, whatever. Years later, you know, etc. Trying to reach a theoretical end to a thread that is never ending.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and maybe it just doesn't end. That's fine too. Some threads, I mean, it's a woven tapestry, right? It goes under the surface for a while, then pops back up in another spot. You know. Yeah.
And you accept you either accept the thread, or you tie it off. You know, try to tie up the loose end, or you just cut it.
See, and that's a weird thing. I think, accepting the thread, you know, because I think, like, there's been so many times, you know, in my own life where it was, like, seeing multiple threads or multiple ropes that I could climb up, that sort of thing. And then trying to do multiple of them or jump from one to the other or something like that rather than seeing it through to its end. So now it's about choosing a thread and seeing the thread through to its end.
But then life is a tapestry, so there's going to be certain threads that ran all the way through the quilt and certain ones that are accents, you know. But it still makes a mosaic of sort.
Right. Yeah. Like this relationship, right? This new relationship, moving to Denver and all that. And it's like, that's a thread where I was like, okay, I'm kind of sick of trying out this thread, then trying out that thread, then jumping from that thread to that thread, and being like, no, I want to choose a thread and see the project through, go as deep as I can with that thread,
Right.
and see what it reveals.
And
And
it was
if
a
the thread
healthy
ends,
thread,
that's fine,
right,
you know,
right.
when it does, or if it does all
Right,
of that,
right.
that's okay, you know.
And you
But to
found
see
out it was
through.
a strong thread because you checked the tension, you know.
Yes, yeah.
And you guys broke up, you stayed together.
Yeah.
You've done it long distance, you know.
Right,
et
yeah, we
cetera.
were testing the
Yeah.
strength of the thread, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's that. Dolly's turning 9, which
Yeah.
is wild.
That's crazy.
Kiddo's turning freaking 9. Going to 4th grade. I remember 4th grade. I was thinking that's when, like, your memories really starting.
Bro, I was in 4th grade when 9/11 happened. Yeah, that's my 4th grade memories. 9/11 in New York.
I was in 7th grade, I believe.
Crazy.
Yeah. Remember, my teacher came into the classroom crying. And you know, like those weird science classrooms with the like sinks, and we had
Yes, yeah.
we were on the military base too.
Right.
ATC, this weird like charter school.
Yeah.
Which had nothing to do with the military. Was just renting out the National Guard's gym and like
weird.
like surrounding offices, you know?
Yeah.
So we had to go to this weird campus, but she comes in, Miss Drew, to the science room.
Miss
Drew. She's kind of puts it on the TV, man. It's crazy. But, you know, still too young to, like, not too young to process. Like, I remember being, like, extremely sad. Like, I even remember, like, pretty sure that was the first time I had, like, shed tears for a public event. And,
Wow,
like,
interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
where I felt, like, empathy for the mass. You know,
Oh,
not
that's so
just the
interesting.
individual,
Yeah.
the micro.
Right.
Yeah. Or like the family or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. See, and I had no conception of that. In 4th grade, it was still very like abstract, you know.
I remember telling my mom, and like after watching like Dan Rather, was just like, man, like I was baffled by the number of people that had like died that day.
Yeah.
I was like, how many people? Just like couldn't like comprehend.
Yeah.
Like I remember later that night just being like for weeks. Like I think that was like a howled content. And plus all the adults were really sad too. So,
Yeah.
and everything in the media was sad and like, you know.
Right.
So and it wasn't like COVID, man. Like back then, all the commercials, all the media, all the news anchors were united.
Oh yeah, there's
It was
American flags
"Proud
everywhere.
to be
Yeah.
an American.
Correct.
George Bush was throwing pitches at freaking the Texas Ranger games. You know?
Right.
It was just different. It was like, of course, there was still contention, you know,
Yeah, sure.
and whatever, and people that were disagreeing, you know.
It was like a moment
It
of
was
unity,
different.
yeah. But
Like now, when COVID hit, I fully expected there to be like
there was none. Yeah, there's-
heroes of COVID on the news,
Right,
all
right.
this stuff, and like,
Yeah.
you know, freaking America.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, it's
Right.
like people just don't want to talk about it anymore. you
Right,
know?
right.
It's just like weird.
Yeah, that's a weird thing with COVID too. Is like it doesn't feel like there's so many loose ends, right? I
Right.
mean, it doesn't feel like there's any true conclusion to it. It was just kind of like, well, I guess it's not happening anymore. But that's not totally true because a couple of weeks ago, I actually got COVID and I was supposed to go see her and couldn't. And she got it like, you know, pretty bad. She was
I got
suffering
it
for a
pretty
week, you know?
recently.
Yeah.
Just a month or two ago.
Yeah,
I was
people are still
wrecked.
dying from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been really weird times for sure.
But I think bright news is we're coming out with the podcast, the Jare to Jared podcast. We met in grad school, 7-8 years ago?
2016.
2016.
Yeah,
first day of our TA.
I met you on
training.
I met you on August 8th, 2016.
Yeah. We're both in
Something, I
the
don't know,
true
something like
department.
that. Yeah.
Ready, young, bright minds,
Yeah.
ready to freaking start learning, man.
Yeah, that was cool.
Start teaching. Start reading.
Yeah, yeah.
Whole legacy ahead of us. We didn't even realize.
Right. Read a lot in those
Did
days.
we accidentally sit next to each other and then through roll, it was like Jared?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then we were like, what the heck?
Yes.
Step Brothers.
It was, bro. It was fate, man. Yeah,
Right.
because I think I came in after you and then just
Yeah,
like sat in
yeah.
a chair next to you. I was
Right.
like, this dude seems all right. I guess I'll
Right,
sit
right.
next to him.
I was like, oh yeah, man, it looks
Oh yeah, it's chill. All right, that's cool.
It's really good. Yeah, and then through roll, Jared's one spelled with the E, one spelled with the A.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna change my daughter's name to Jared with an I.
Bro, she threw down a new spelling for Jared the other night that I liked.
Oh,
She goes
yeah,
Jaryd. I was like, that's
Right,
cool. That was
right.
cool.
If your name is Jared with a Y out there,
Yeah. Like if you live in
Right,
that
the
elven
show.
realm, that's how you would spell it.
let us know. We're gonna have a Gmail, jaredtojarad@gmail.com. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Listen, man, I'm gonna have to edit all for the rest of the week, which is cool. That's gonna
Yeah,
give
yeah.
me time while you're at the monastery over there to we'll have to talk about monastery living, all kinds of stuff we got to bring.
Yeah.
We were actually the originals of the monastery, I believe. Was that not right?
What, that joke?
No, like the whole concept of like, the single monastery life.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I said that joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which that's a good conversation too. Actually,
Oh, it's a great one. We're gonna have to talk
monastery,
about that. The monastery.
Yeah.
We'll bring in Zay for. Oh man! Apparently, Zay said that the monastery podcast me and him did went in like top 10, and and
Really?
yeah.
How
It was
many,
crazy
like,
on a
listen? How many
on a
listens?
global chart.
What?
I can't remember what it was. I'll have to ask him about it. But yeah, he was freaking out. He sent me a screenshot of it.
No
It was
way.
crazy. Yeah. Like, what?
What's the most listens you ever got on The Last Scholar?
The most I got was on oh man, what's that famous American theorist?
Jameson?
Frederick
Frederick Jameson or
Frederick
something?
Jameson.
Yeah.
I did a Frederick Jameson article where I
Right.
recapped it. And man, that thing would get a lot of hits.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that one
Yeah.
had a few thousand.
Right.
Yeah. It
Oh,
wasn't,
really?
yeah, it wasn't like crazy, but I think it had like 1,200, or like 1,200 probably,
Yeah.
something like that.
That's
Yeah,
cool. That's cool.
yeah. But that was one of the only episodes that would get like 20 like a
Yeah.
week or something,
Yeah.
So,
That's cool.
yeah.
I guess people just like, if they were students or whatever. look
Right.
up
And it's like,
Jameson
oh,
and
Frederick
then-
Jameson. Cool.
Or they
So
were
now-
looking up
yeah.
whiskey and got lost.
Right. It's like, oh, Jameson. What kind of movies? Oh, it's lost. We should even have a jam out session,
What do
one
you
day on one of the shows.
What do you mean
Bust
a
out
jam
the
out
guitars.
session? Oh, yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Plays Deliverance. But ding, 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 ding.
Bro, we got to do. Remember when we played this some years ago now? But like, one of us was playing guitar and the other one was reading Shelley.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
that was
Dalton was all
incredible.
like this,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that was cool.
Right.
That was insane.
Was Dalton there? I thought
think
that was
so.
at like.
I think we did it a couple of times.
Yeah,
I remember
think
Dalton being there.
I remember one of the Dalton sessions, but I also remember me and you doing it in front of all the grad students at a party. Like, who was the
yeah.
like bald white dude's name?
Fucking Nick Lyle.
Nick. At Nick's house, me and you were like, and I grabbed the goblet.
Those parties were so funny. Like if you want to
like-
have fun, go to an English grad student party because it's
In
so weird,
Mexico.
bro. Yeah, it's so weird. Like,
Yeah.
we just get wasted.
Probably
It's
around
like 2 a.m.
Any
Everyone's like
graduate party would be weird. Yeah.
everyone's like reading Chaucer out loud.
And
or
what was
something.
that thing you guys used to chant like in the bathroom?
The
drunk and
the
stuff?
Jabberwocky.
Yeah.
We got super drunk and start chanting the Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. So weird.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Oh man. I can't remember if you told me like the first line. I think I'd be able to like slip back.
Dude,
into
one
it. I
time
can't
at
remember it
Steffi's
now.
house, I busted, or it was at Andrea's house, I busted out Thomas Wolfe and was
Oh,
just like
I remember that.
reading to everybody
Beautiful,
in the
yeah.
kitchen.
Yeah.
Wow, man, her eyes were bluer than blue. And he looked down on the pastures and realized it was near as far. So good. Oh, man.
It's awesome.
So we'll record one a month. We're gonna try.
Let's do
Since
it.
Jared's gonna be living in Colorado, we'll try to do one a month. Really good audio quality.
Yeah, one live one.
But we're
yeah.
gonna try to hit you with one a week. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so we'll try to we'll try to get the audio quality as best as we can on the calls when we're not in the same place. But you know, hey. I think it's gonna be a good time. You know, what are gonna be our podcast follower names? You know, the Jareds,
Jared's, yeah.
the Reds, the Rats,
Jaredson.
Jaredsons,
Rick Jared's.
Jared Steves. Which is good because we could do travel shows.
Bro,
and,
yeah, we
you
can do
know,
anything. I mean, how would you describe? I guess we'll figure
Jared's
it
a
out.
master. I mean, you know,
Yeah, I'm master. Well, like, what is this podcast, right? Someone, you know, you run into someone and they're like, "What's your podcast about?" It can be in one sentence, you know.
Right.
Is it just like a general interest, art
Right.
and culture? What are we doing here?
Right, exactly. I think it's of all forms, is what it is.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
I like our formula.
It's a collage.
Yeah, it's a collage.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can come in here. We can talk about whatever, movies, music. We can theorize. We can, you know, if we're having personal issues, we can discuss that between each other, relationship issues, whatever it may be. Essentially, we want to bring our friendship to the podcast world.
Yeah.
You know, that's been going for a while. And we figured we've solved a lot of the world's problems already.
Pretty
we
much,
just
yeah.
didn't have a recording device.
Bro, if everyone just like listened to us, you know, it's like the world would be great.
Yeah. But now we're going to be recording. I don't know. I think it's going to be good, man.
Yeah. No, this will
really
be fun. Yeah.
Well, hey, safe journeys up to the monastery and the retreat.
Thanks, bro.
I
Appreciate
think I
it.
might do it one day as well. But yeah.
Do it. It's you certainly get a lot out of it. I think I've shed some layers at least. You know.
Yeah. Are you gonna say what's up before you go back, or you'll go to Colorado from there?
No, I'm gonna
Yeah,
go straight
yeah.
in that direction. So yeah.
Nice. Well, cool, man. Anxious to meet Ashley. I'm sure she'll hear this pod
Hell yeah.
published. So yeah, I'll go hang out. I'll go hang out in Colorado next
Yeah,
time.
we'll record it there.
All right, cool.
Nice.
Weird.
Yeah, bro. Jared's Jared.
Thanks, Jared. Later.
Later.
On behalf of the Jareds, thank you for listening. Email the show at jaredtojarad@gmail.com. We will be back next week. Cheerio.